In a world like our own, there lived a family of three: the father Gar, the mother Lily, and their daughter Allison. They were all one happy family until the dragon from another world came and infected most of the population with a lethal disease, including Allison. This lethal disease spread throughout the city and caused a panic emptying the streets. Nobody could find a cure to this disease, and Gar and Lily couldn't watch young Allison pass away slowly and painfully. Gar thought and thought of how he could help young little Allison, and he finally came up with an idea. "The only way I'm going to find the cure is by going to the world the monster came from," he said. Gar packs his suitcase for his long journey, knowing he may never see his daughter again. He tucks away a family picture, and the family of three walks cautiously to the train station. They reach the train station, and Gar finally says goodbye to Allison and Lily. "I'm going to look for the cure to this disease. I will send a paper bird like this when I find it. I want you to hold on to this bird until I get back. I love you both and will see you soon," he says as he steps on the train and goes off in the distance. Gar sat on the train, studying his cold soup in front of him. The train came to a stop and everyone boarded onto a mysterious boat. The crowd sat down on the boat as the boat made a janky noise and began to move down into the sea. Gar looked up to the sky as he watched the ship slowly sink into his grave. It was completely black. Suddenly, the ship shot back over the surface, except it was different this time. Gar looked around and noticed he was not in the same world. Everyone on the ship looked out across the bay at the outrageous city with the giant statues and endless skyscrapers. The instructor yelled at the crowd, "Welcome to the in-between! Everyone line up outside the ship for inspection." The crowd lines up tightly exiting the ship. They had to check the guests' ears and eyes to make sure they were not infected by the disease. Gar goes through the line and receives his pass to the magical wizarding world. He steps into the transport bubble and was on his way. He flies over the magnificent town of Hogwarts and soars towards a town called Monsterville. Gar steps out of the transport bubble and sees the enormous dragon statue towering over the town. Gar starts his journey by roaming the streets looking for clues or people to talk to. He starts out by trying to decipher signs on the ground when a friendly stranger taps him on the shoulder. Gar jerks his head around and then asks the stranger if he has any idea where he can find the cure to this disease. The stranger answers, "Ah, yes, we get visitors like you all the time. You need to find the old wizard with the magical piece." "Let me start you off in the right direction," the stranger says. Gar searches and searches from town to town. He even goes from the town of the horn-tailed dragon to the depths of the city of the floating ships. He asks everyone, the pyro, the chef, the veterinarian, and even the pirates if they knew where he could find the old wizard. But nobody knew where the old wizard was. Losing hope, Gar sits down and looks at the lovely picture of his family. "I miss them so much," he thinks, just as a mysterious creature comes up to him with a poster in its mouth. "This is what you need to save your daughter, but there may be consequences to saving her," the creature says. The creature leaves quickly, giving Gar a puzzled look. Gar is desperate at this point and takes the poster to the first person he sees, asking, "Do you know where this wizard is?" The man looks at the poster and says, "This wizard is in the factory right down the road, but be careful." Gar shakes the man's hand and was off on his way. Gar arrives at the factory to discover an army of labor workers. He goes and moves throughout the factory looking for the old wizard. He finally spots an old man with a pointy hat. He taps the old man on the shoulder. "Well, what can I do for you, young lad?" the old man says. Gar asks, "I'm looking for the old wizard and was told I can find him here. Where can I find him?" "Well, you're in luck, young lad. I am the old wizard. What is wrong?" Gar responds, "I am from another world that has been infected by one of your dragons, and I was told you have the solution to the disease he brought upon us." The old wizard asks, "Have you seen any floating flowers in town?" Startled by the question, Gar answers, "Yes, I luckily saved one as a present for my daughter when I returned home." The old wizard responds, "Okay, young lad. The first thing you need to do is give me the floating flower you found so I can melt it in Bernard." "Bernard? Who is Bernard?" Gar responds. The old wizard explains, "Nobody is Bernard. There are only a couple Bernards left in this world. Bernard is a very rare instrument that melts the floating flowers seen in town and is used to cure various diseases. You see, you put the floating flower in Bernard, and it activates the nectar from the floating flower, and puts the newly formed flower into this white bottle you see here." Gar hands the old wizard the floating flower as the old wizard asks, "Are you sure you want me to do this? There may be some consequences." Without hesitation, he says, "Yes, my daughter needs this. But I must ask, what is the other instrument you will use right there?" The old wizard says, "I will be using this instrument called a potion pipe. Old wizards use this instrument to make particular potions to cure the disease of the long-lost dragon. He pours out some of the potion he made and says, "Here, try this potion. It will make you immune to the disease your daughter carries." They whip back the potion and relax for a minute as the potion does its magic. The old wizard finally looks at the flower, melts it in Bernard, and places it in a cup with the potion from the potion pipe. The newly formed flower absorbs the potion in the cup as he hands it to Gar to bring back to his daughter. The old wizard taps him on the shoulder and says, "Follow this back to the transport bubble," as he blows on his pet and flies away, guiding Gar back to the transport bubble. He spots the transport bubble and decides to write a nice letter for his daughter. He folds the letter into a paper bird just as he promised and places it into the envelope with the flower containing the cure to her sickness. He walks to the transport bubble, opens the door, and tries to walk in, but somehow he is blocked by an invisible barrier. He tries and keeps getting pushed back. Out of frustration, he throws the envelope at the transport bubble, and the envelope somehow went through an invisible barrier. Startled by the scene, he walks away to go revisit the old wizard as to why this is happening. He peers over his shoulder, walking away, and notices the transport bubble floating away. He runs after the transport bubble, yelling at the top of his lungs, "Come back! Come back!" as he looks up and watches his daughter's life float away. Gar walks back into the factory, furiously to talk to the old wizard. He says, "I threw the envelope at the transport bubble and it somehow went in and left without me." The old wizard answers, "Young lad, I told you there were some consequences. The cure will make it back to your family, but you will not. You may come to this magical wizarding world, but once you have experienced magic, you may not leave." Gar yells, "I've not used any magic since I've been here." "Young lad, you drank the potion I made out of the potion pipe earlier," the old wizard says. Gar looks at the old wizard, realizing he got tricked and will never be with his family again. He returns to Monsterville, sits down, and takes out his suitcase. He opens his suitcase and watches his daughter take out the paper bird and the flower to cure her sickness. He smiles, sits there, and watches his family live their lives from his suitcase simply because he got tricked into experiencing magic by the old wizard.